Guess what day it is? Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Anybody? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Hump day, hump day, hump day.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Sorry, always technical difficulties trying to get on live. Don't even know if you can hear me. My computer is running very slow and on the fritz. Looks like the sound's working. Welcome back, Franz. How you doing tonight?
I'm well. Good to be here. I just checked the volume on my phone. I could hear you, so
Excellent.
I think our volumes are all right.
Yeah, looks like your audio is coming through on this end. So at least that's going right.
All right. We're on the ball.
All right. So what do you got for us this week, buddy?
Well, last time we got cut off. The power went out, and
Yeah, that's right.
I felt like, well, I still wanted to do the show. I didn't want to give up or not do it, regardless of what was happening. So I thought I'd start thinking about the next show and what I wanted to discuss, present, I guess. I mentioned the Tribe of Dan. But so I had that show ready, and then I text you Sunday saying I had two, maybe we could do two shows. And then I listened to your show Monday morning on the way to work. And I knew I had to do the one I put together Sunday.
Oh, awesome. Are you talking about the Kamala show?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Well, that's great, dude. I can't wait to hear what you got to show us.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Tribe of Dan, do a brief introduction on who they are, and bring it up to our time. Who they were, what they are, and who they are now. And this is one of the books I've been reading. It's called Dan, the Pioneer of Israel. It was actually wrote in 1880 by the keeper of the crown jewels. And he worked for the Vatican. He just kept track of whatever, of the jewels, money, or whatever. There wasn't a lot about the guy. But this was in his personal writings he kept to himself, and then it was refound, whatever, and then published. But it's excellent book. Lots of references where he gets his information from. So it takes a lot if you're cross-checking and looking up things when you're reading. This book is definitely one that'll make you go into the Bible and many other places. But I just wanted to point out who Dan is in chapter 1. The tribe of Dan, by its enterprise and vigor, has made itself one of the most conspicuous branches of Jacob's family. Its ancestor was the son of one of the concubines and was the firstborn of Rachel's household. God hath judged me, said Rachel, and she called his name Dan, which means to judge or to rule. This word, while perhaps on the occasion of its started surname, has been perpetuated as a title in the Gothic, Anglo-Saxon, and English. In these languages, Din, Dun, Don, and Dan signify ruler and master. So the expression and repeatedly used by Shakespeare, Spenser, Chaucer, Prior, and others. The Spanish, too. From close contact and ages with the Hebrew, have engrafted it into the title of Don. It is used in our universities and designate a professor or university official. It talks about this conference in 1875, but he goes on to say Latin Dominus, and as far as done, it's Scotch. So he's also saying Latin, Scottish, Rome. I wanted to point this out that it's basically that simple, where if you see a name or a city title with Din, Don, Dun, Dan, or a D, pretty much guaranteed it's from the tribe of Dan.
Now, are you saying dawn like in the morning dawn? Like, is that one of the options?
Well, no, it's different spelling. D-O-N.
All right.
All right. So like Don Juan, or
Yeah.
the boss of the mafia is the Don.
Right. All right. Yeah, I was
And
just curious.
it works, and that works feminine as well, like Dan, Danny, Danielle,
Yeah.
all the way through history. Excuse me. So here we go. It talks about it in after their name Dan, or after the name of Dan, their father, in Judges 18:29. Talks about physical locations of where Don. It talks about Don and Din and all being identical. How often do we see in the Bible the name of the individual foreshadows the character and career? Dan's name, given by Rachel, implies authority, vigor, and Jacob gave bestowing his blessings. That was in Genesis 49:16. And he repeats and confirms, Dan shall judge his people.
Yeah. I found this side note. I was listening to the book of John today, and it was talking about Judas selling out Jesus. And I thought it was an interesting parallel that Dan used to be one of the original 12 tribes, but then was removed and judged out of the 12 tribes. And Judas Iscariot was one of the 12 apostles, but he was judged out of the 12 apostles, and both of them had to be replaced.
Right.
It's pretty interesting.
No, and that's definitely a fact that will be, I want to keep in mind, because I'm going to get into why to me, that's some bad blood. Dan holding grudges, right? He was expected to be a certain thing because of who he was and where he was from, but he didn't get anything. So sheep and wolf wolf and sheep clothing, pretty much, is where I'm, they're going to walk us through. Right there, here we are. We're able to go forth in war. 62,700 of them talk about going to war. Numbers 1:38 through 39. And the very lot that fell to them in the promised land was calculated to stir up an inherent spirit. The lot was on the coast of Ashkelon to Joppa, and it was in the purposes of God, too little for them. So that's saying what Jay just said. They were promised land from the promised land, didn't got downsides to a little bit, and then nothing at all.
Yeah.
And so in the Bible, it talks about how he was a small tribe, and from that point, he wandered on. But they were seafarers. They took to the sea. Dan were the sea peoples. They're mariners. Okay? And this is the 2nd book that I'm going to quickly I'll show you. It's called The Ancient Israel Tribe of Dan and the Sea Peoples. This is another good read. Chapter 1, Dan the Mariner. The story of the ancient Israel tribe of Dan. The story of tribe of Dan, namesake, one of the sons of Jacob / Israel, begins with the biblical patriarch Abraham. And the trend of being Abraham is woven throughout all of history and presents itself to the world today as worldwide Christendom. It was with Abraham that God reinstituted himself among the descendants of Adam, properly known as Adam kind. Modern translators of the Bible do great disservices to its students in the word Adam or Adam kind, and translate more than 500 times as man or mankind. Okay, so here we'll finish the... However, the Bible itself tells us that it's in recording of its genealogy of Adam, Genesis 5:1, therefore is entirely the descendants of man named Adam. So this is saying where who's Dan's father was, and saying like Dan takes on how Adam is mankind, man is Adam. So like if Don Juan, he's a Danite. Danish, that's a country that was originated by the Dans. Okay? And we should note that the word Eber and the spelling of name Heber is of Hebrew and Phoenician, or Hebrew and Chaldean origin. Heber or Eber, from whom comes the name Hebrew, is in the lineage of Shem, one of the sons of Noah. Furthermore, Heber means colonizer. The fact that the descendants of Heber have been the greatest mariners and dominating colonizers in the world. Interestingly, the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, therefore the Hebrew Peninsula, the birthplace of the Spanish Celts, although some of Dan. So what this is saying is Eber is a parent of the tribe of Dan, and his name meant colonizer. So roughly what it means is Danites are colonizers, mariners, and judges of their own people.
Yeah, I mean, if they're the serpent tribe, which, I firmly believe, then God would use them to judge his people. Like all of us. Like Satan's doing the same thing today. He's judging us.
He is. They're judging us, judging their own people. Okay, and they acclimated with everybody and everything. They wouldn't just invade a city and wipe them all out and it be their city. Sure, they would go and destroy them, but they would acclimate with them and then make it theirs.
Yeah.
So Phoenicia was never really a country, which is a fact I said before, and it still bothered me, and that's why I loved this book, because the Phoenicians were a group of people. We gave them that name because Danites did exactly what I said. Okay. Phoenicia was never really a country, but mostly a ground unified cities along the Mediterranean coast. The Danite apparently amalgamated with the Phoenicians. Member of the biblical figure of Samson. Samson was Danite and had the Phoenician mother. He actually lived in a city named Mahamath Dan, which means the camp of Dan. His son was first Israelite known to actively counteract Philistine aggression, which took place later part of the 20th century. So the point of that is Dan's... So you can pretty much guarantee a PH or a P, like a Phoenicia, Philistine,
Yeah.
Palestine, are tribes of Dan. Further note, 12th century BC pictures from Mecha Habu, an ancient Egyptian town carved into the temple of Egyptian pharaoh Ramses III, depict the battle between the Egyptians and the Sea Peoples, the Dans. So again, here the Dans invaded Egypt, amalgamated or whatever. Sorry, it means to make it your own, make it believe what you are, and it would be like me moving into Jay's town and making everybody take on my last name.
Like conquering it. It's
Basic.
Like Julius Caesar coming in. Yeah.
So now you make what they're doing is not only, it's mixing their DNA and their gods and changing it to their name. They're also taking on the history they just took over as their own. It's nothing new under the sun. They do that today.
Right. That's what Constantine did.
Absolutely.
With the Christian and the Roman Catholics and the Jews, and like he just mixed it all together and made it his own.
He comes from the tribe of Dan.
Yeah, well, that makes good sense.
And it's really that simple. I mean, it sounds stupid, but I'm not a linguist. I haven't studied multiple language, but I've delved into it enough to find similarities and this grasp that these similarities. Like I said in an earlier show about how if you write Latin backwards, it's Arabic. Same thing. And I'll show you another one too, because Dan started that. Okay. Here we start this page. I wanted to point out King Solomon established a fleet of ships, and he asked the Phoenician king Hiram of Tyre to send him experienced sailors and officers to men to supervise his fleet. Took about 1000 BC by the time the Egyptian had long since established a treaty with the Sea Peoples. See, that treaty is what I said. The Sea People pretty much say they went in there and slapped them around enough for them to say, okay, you control everything, And now here we have King Hiram of Tyre, right?
Is that Hiram Abiff?
Hiram Abiff, correct.
Yeah.
I'll get into who he is.
Yeah.
And so he hired the Sea People. He hired the Dans to protect his fleet of ships, basically. So he's like, well, you just, beat up the people who beat me up. So do you think you want to work with me, basically?
Yeah.
So, and during this time, roughly the same time the Egyptians, the Israelites, and Phoenicians created a treaty, which would be the Egyptians that have now been with the Dans, and the Israelites, who are the Dans, and the Phoenicians, who are the Dans. You see the pattern.
Yeah.
And these are all different kingdoms that have different territories, and they're creating treaties to get along and to help each other. Okay. And the discoveries in the last few decades have confirmed the presence of Egyptian Phoenician writing on stone, which I was saying earlier show, over the Pacific and into the Southern Americas. I showed you the Anubis cave. Right? So this book verifies that. And the first indications of the pioneer spirit came when the nation of Israel was released from Egypt's bondage. Many historians place the date of Exodus around 1450 BC, although some historians claim it to be the account of the Exodus in Egyptian records. Several ancient records do report that a Semitic, which comes from Shem, of the ancestry of Shem and Noah's sons. So if you hear anybody talking or explaining the Bible, anybody saying Semitic, it was created from Shem. Right? And Shem is one of Noah's son. People called Danan were expelled from Egypt.
Like the yogurt?
So Yes, either that's exactly. I was further on a few more slides. I'm going to show that they're the Greeks. Greeks are not Greeks. They're not themselves. They're the Phoenician tribes of Dan. And they throw it in your face with your Greek yogurt.
Yep.
Dannon. It's so funny. It's really literally that simple. Right? Now we noted the word Semite comes from ancient biblical name Shem. After the flood time, they repopulated the Middle Eastern region. Two great hordes of people are descended from one of Shem's great grandsons, Abraham. Abraham's firstborn Ishmael, from whom the Arabs descended. The second was Isaac, the chosen son from whom all the Israelites are descended. And all of the myriad of peoples that evolved as a result of the northwestern migration of the 10 scattered tribes. In addition, Abraham had sons by another woman. Okay? And this was the point of the page, because I wanted to point out that you had so many tribes, and these historic events will say this was his wife, and she had a servant. Which nowadays they'll say a slave and give you this whole slave whatever, but the servant is really like nepotism. It's like a cousin or a nephew, or not an immediate relative.
Right, they used to treat them just like family.
They didn't. No, they were blood, but they would treat him and call him a servant. Okay. And most of the time, these husbands would have
concubines.
Concubines, right. They would have other children by these other family members that were labeled as servants. And I've been explaining that throughout our shows, and as the Pope will have a nephew and it'll become his son, and then become, anyways. I was just watching. No, is any of my pictures showing up? Because I seen.
No, it's been on you the whole time.
Well, I'm presenting. I don't know why.
No, I just see it's a big screen of you, man.
Anyways, so when I'm describing these pictures that I'm not showing you, yeah. I'm looking at them, but I'm not showing you. They're just basically words. They're the pages of the book that I snapshot. No. How about now? Can you see me now?
Hold on. Yeah, it's coming in now. There you go.
I apologize.
No,
so the only picture that I really showed you, I don't know, I'm a little blushy right now. So the only the pictures I showed you were the covers. I don't know if you can see them. This was the first one.
Well, it's blurring it out. I can see the word Dan. Like, it looks
all
like
right. Yeah. Either way, we'll get on. So, we just mentioned the Greeks, like Dannon, the yogurt. So Hercules was a Greek. Right? In Hebrew, the word Herculeum means traders. So the Greeks are Dannonites, and they still use Hebrew. And Hercules basically means a trader. The ancient historian Homer called all of the Greeks ergos and referred to them all as Dani. So
yeah, that's where the Kraken was gonna destroy. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, because as much as they're hiding their history and the history that they're amalgamating with, so that I feel like God was trying to say it subtly throughout history, and it shows up. These people are giving great references to places where they get their information, and it's very biblical as well. Can't erase it completely because they are bound, you know.
Yeah.
So Hercules and Greek amalgamation, traders and buccaneers of the Danites. The leader possessing superhuman strength. That's legends of Hercules and Samson. As I just said, Samson was a superhuman of the Danites.
Yeah, God gave him super strength.
All right. The great city of Troy was later conquered by the Greek army in the Trojan War. So again, they continued to go on to the Romans. Troy was conquered by the Dananite Greeks. And then it says that a band of the Trojans, commanded by Achaeus, escaped by sea and sailed to what known as Italy. So that tells me Dan was already migrating and setting into cities before they would invade them. They would start teaching and sharing how to be a mariner, how to sail long distances, how to make a boat that can hold up. So when you hear about, certain sieges of cities and somebody, one of the, the people who are getting attacked flee in boats, it's almost already part Dan. Everybody's in on their own thing. This was like a world domination thing from then. As the Danites left Egypt and migrated northward and westward along the Mediterranean, it appears that the bulk of the coastal city kingdoms were either created or conquered by the descendants of Dan. According to the ancient Greek writers, the city kingdom of Troy was founded by Dardanus. And like I said, it's that simple. He's a Dan. Before the end of the 15th century BC, Troy was located due north of Egypt, in a region of Greece known as Argos. Historian Herbert Hannay wrote about the Danite connection with Greece and stated the northern Danites on the north coast of Egypt, migrating as the Danoi, landed in Peloponnesus, Apai, or Argos. And the Argiv and the Argos are really Dananoi.
So that makes a lot of sense, because in the Bible, when Jesus came and they were spreading the gospel, they said to the Jew first and then to the Greek. So it was to God's people and then to the serpent bloodline.
Correct.
Well, that explains a lot. If Dan is the Greeks, that would explain exactly why it says to the Jew first, then to the Greek. Of course, not today's Jews. I just want to clarify, not today's Jews.
No, and I believe that's what the tribe of Dan definitely distorted, was what Jewish, Semitic, and Hebrew mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that. And so Dan is the son of Jacob, who became Israel, right? Jacob, or Israel, had a wife, Rachel, who is not the mother of Dan. All right. Israel had his concubine, which was, I'd say like a niece. And her parents couldn't take care of them, or one of them got killed in battle in one of these, whatever. And so she became a servant to Rachel. And no, wait, I'm sorry. I'm mixing that all up. I really am. I am sorry. So Jacob went to his uncle to marry because he fell in love with his cousin. That's how he got Rachel, right? But the uncle wanted 7 years of work, and he would promise the daughter that Jacob was in love with. But it wasn't his firstborn in traditions where you give your firstborns first. So the uncle tricked Jacob into marrying his firstborn. And when he realized this happened after the 7 years, he's like, but I wanted her. And he's like, well, I could only do it you know, if you married my first, so now if you divorce her, I can marry off the second one for 7 more years of work, of course. So he agreed, and the whole time he was waiting to get Rachel, he was having children with the oldest daughter he was tricked into marrying. Quick summary there. It'll come back up in here. I have other slides of it, but either way, the birthplace of Hercules in Greek. In Hebrew, the word Hebrew means traders. I've already done this page. And that one. Okay, so here the what are the Phoenicians called in the Bible? In Greece and Rome, the Phoenicians were framed as traders in purple. I've mentioned purple a lot. I believe you mentioned purple recently, Jay, and is referring to their monopoly on the precious purple dye derived from the shells of murex snails found along its coast. In the Bible, they were famed as seafaring merchants. Their dyes used to color priestly vestments.
Yeah, dude, it takes like 1 million snails to make a one piece of linen or something.
Right,
ridiculous.
and that's why it was so valuable. But I mean, this is now the Danites spending multiple generations on the sea. So all there to them that's no big deal, but it does take a lot. But this was more the proof of the Phoenicians being the Dans. Israel, either 2 political units: Hebrew, Old Testament, the United Kingdom of Israel under the kings Saul, David, and Solomon, which lasted about 1020 to 922 BCE, or the Northern Kingdom of Israel, including the territories of the 10 northern tribes. So here again, they just say 10. They don't talk about the other 2. They kind of, indicate that they're Judah and Benjamin, but so Israel here it gets confusing throughout time when they hear Israel, because it sounds like they're talking about a physical Israel, but this was just the Israelites being under the kings, Saul, David, and Solomon, and these 3 didn't really care for Judah and Benjamin, I'm taking, but Benjamin wound up becoming part of Dan. He's from the tribe of Dan, and they get blended in together too. Dan, one of the 12 tribes of Israel that in the biblical times comprised the people of Israel who later became the Jewish people. The tribe was named after the first of the 2 born sons, Jacob, also called Israel, of Bilhah, the maidservant of Jacob's second wife, Rachel. All right, so so Bilhah is the mother of Dan, who was... So Jacob had a lot of children with different women.
Yeah, they all did back then.
Yeah. Which were really their own family. 9 of the other 11 tribes were also named after the sons of Jacob. So here, these tribes could be the maidservant of one wife, the second wife, some of that wife. So they're all right here blending. They're named after the sons of Jacob. Bear names of Jacob's grandsons, children of Joseph. All right. It goes on to talk about Samson, but that was the particular part I wanted of that page. So Judah is the 4th son of the patriarch Jacob, and his first wife Leah, his full brother reborn Simon and Levi, all older, and Isaiah. Is that how you pronounce it? All right. And Zebulun. Young. Then these were the 2 youngers, and I think the 2 youngers were from a concubine as well. And he has one full sister. Her name is Dinah. She's a Danite. Bilhah, according to the book of Genesis, Dan, judgment, was the first of the two sons of Jacob in Bilhah. Jacob's fifth son, his mother, Bilhah, was Rachel's handmaid. Bilhah reminds me of Bob Bale. That name starts coming through, and at that point, to me. So here, who was Deborah, and why was she so important? Deborah was one of the major judges, a military leader, in the story of how Israel takes the land of Canaan. She is the only female judge, the only one to be called prophet, and the only one described performing a judicial function. Deborah is Diana.
Oh, yeah?
That's where Deborah, like Diana, Wonder Woman, she's a
Yeah.
Dan.
Yeah.
Yale plays an important role in the story of Israel's wars with the Canaanites. Now, the Canaanites are Phoenician. Right? They both were not really a territory or a country. They were just controlled cities. So Canaanites are a mix of the Dans as well. And they're described in the book of Judges. In the narrative about the military heroine, Deborah, Yale kills Sisera, the Canaanite general, in King Jabin, after he escapes from the battle with Deborah's general, Barak.
Obama?
Dan had a brother, Nephtali, were the sons of Bilhah. When Rachel was barren during the years that her sister Leah, co-wife of Jacob, had bore 4 children, she decided to give Bilhah to Jacob to act as a surrogate mother for her. You can read the account of Rachel's jealousy and her subsequent decision to use Bilhah as her surrogate in chapter 30 of the book of Genesis. They're listed on the biblical timeline. And that's where a part of how they got the name the judge, because Rachel was saying God judged her and was still able to give her a son through the surrogate mother. And this is Nephtali, Dan's brother. His name meant my struggle. He was the last of the 2 sons of Jacob and Bilhah. He was the founder of the Israelite tribe Nephtali. Some biblical commentators have suggested that the name Nephtali may refer to the struggle between Rachel and Leah for the favors of Jacob. Bilhah was the handmaid of Rachel, who was infertile at the time and had persuaded Jacob to have a child with Bilhah as a proxy for having one with herself. So it's a big jealousy thing.
Yeah, that never works out good, man.
And so I have a son. He's my firstborn, but he's really another woman's firstborn, but I'm claiming it as my firstborn. And I prayed to God to give me a son, and he gave me a son through her, but then he never got his father's blessings, or he got his father's blessings, but the other children didn't. So when then he became an Israel, some of them got their tribes and their land, but one was left out. Do you see where I'm going with all of it? Just big family feud. My dad doesn't love me enough. You're not my mom type. Makes me think of how they broke families in the 80s and 90s. Everything became super divorcey.
Yeah,
you know,
they were trying to
it just seems
destroy
like
the
it's the
family.
same. Nothing new under the sun. Right? And here, Hebrew, all right, We don't. They've misdrew our perception of Hebrew. It's a member of ancient people living in what was now Israel, Palestine, according to biblical tradition, descendants from the patriarch Jacob, which would be all of them, including the Dans, not just what we know now as Israel and Palestine. Right? These were people, the peoples, right? A Semitic language used by the ancient Hebrews in modern Israel. But there's traces of this ancient Hebrew language all over the globe. And wherever it started from, wherever it ended up, it's all over.
Yeah, because God's people were scattered across the earth.
And who are the mariners? The Dans.
Yeah, that's who I think the... So in 1945, when they made Israel a country, it was to deceive God's people, because in the Bible it talks about a regathering of Israel. So the world, Satan's world, created a country called Israel and had all his people move there, which I would assume is the Danites,
Correct.
who call themselves Jews and are not, but do lie, but are the synagogue of Satan.
So they're from the bloodline, and they don't like who are the Shemitic, who are the Jew, right? They were called the Jew. Dan called themselves the Jewish because they were Jewish. They had some of the blood, but they weren't them, and they didn't get their tribe.
Yeah.
So they were jealous and hated that. So we're going to infiltrate by spreading our DNA, taking over your history, making yours ours. And everywhere there was a great city or a great kingdom, not too far was a town or a city that was being conquered or built by a Dan, named with a D. And that still continues to this day. Okay, back then, Habaru in Egypt. Habaru is a variant spelling Haparu, Aparu, a designation of a class of people who made their living by hiring themselves out for various services. The biblical Hebrews had been in Egypt for generations, but apparently they became a threat, so one of the pharaohs enslaved them. And they gave them the Egyptian name of the Haparu. So that's the Danites who became the Egyptians, started hating who was already of their blood, but were the Jews, who were the actual Israelites. So they became a threat.
Yeah.
All right. And it was Habaru, meaning outsiders, was applied to nomads, fugitive bandits, and workers of inferior status. The word is etymologically related to Hebrew, and the relationship of Habaru, a formulated Hyksos, the Hebrews it's been a long debate. Right, the Hyksos are thought to have been Semitic, which explains why they would have been open to Canaanites, like Joseph's family. Right? They're like, we're jealous that we're not part of your family and given God's land, the promised land. But come on in, Joseph's family. All right? They didn't mind. They let them in the country. The records show that the Hyksos had Canaanite names like the Hebrews. So they had the same names, like Dan or Dana. And their main gods were Baal and Anath. Here's the Phoenician language side by side compared to the Paleo-Hebrew language. It's almost identical.
Yeah.
Almost identical. So here's your Danites. They're Hebrew. Switch it up a little bit. It's Jewish.
Yeah.
Jewish was given to us to deceive. Okay. So here we go. We mentioned Hiram. Hiram's mother being a woman of the daughters of Dan. Firstly, Hiram's mother was a woman, the daughters of Dan. This is in 2 Chronicles. No one can tell whether Dan here refers to the tribe of Dan or the city of Dan. But It's the same thing. Huram, king of Tyre, in the time of David and Solomon, after David had conquered Jerusalem, Hiram sent his cedar wood and carpenters and masons so they might build his temple. And who were the carpenters and masons?
Yeah,
Danites.
that's why the Freemasons love Hiram Abiff.
Because the Freemasons are Danites.
Yeah.
Hiram was the pagan god of Tyre, a port city, meaning on the sea, mariners. They were 140 miles northwest of Jerusalem. Under his reign, Tyre became an important Phoenician city and a large trading empire. The Old Testament tells us that Hiram was a friend and business associate of David and Solomon's father. Hiram's father, Baal.
Yeah.
And it looks like Egyptian hieroglyphs on a rock. And this is where they say that means Abibal, Hiram's father. The tale of Hiram Abiff has passed down in Masonic lodges, underpins the third degree. It starts with the arrival in Jerusalem and is appointed by Solomon and chief architect and master of works in the construction of his temple. As the temple is nearing completion, 3 fellow craft masons from the workforce ambush him and leaves the building, demanding the secrets of the master mason. Hiram has challenged by each in turn, and each refused to divulge the information, and silence strikes him with the mason's tool. All right, so he's an architect, and the mathematician, the architect, the mason for Solomon. Solomon has him building his first temple, the first temple. And then people were basically amazed. Even the people who worked with him or followed him were like, wow, this is an amazing feat. You know, you're a genius. Tell us these God-given, quote unquote, God-given secrets and knowledge. And he wouldn't give it to him, and he got murdered in the temple. So here, if you look up Hiram Abiff and look up the images, these are the images that you'll get. These were the first ones in line. You got Sonic history. It shows Hiram Abiff, and it shows the picture I've shown you a lot of the Freemasons as Knights Templar with a Baphomet over him. And the Freemasons checkered floor. So he's basically the architect Freemason who knows all this stuff. He's friends with Solomon. He's a Freemason. He's a Danite.
Yeah, the Masons love Solomon too.
They do, and David. That's why they mentioned the star, the David. You know,
Yeah.
they have you know temples that are the Temple of David. Like in my town, it's the Temple of Solomon. But here we have Baphomet. They tell you here, I believe this is Dan Knight too, also getting you to believe what Baphomet is. Baphomet was an old French corruption of the name Mohammed. And some Templars in the military occupation, Alameter, have begun incorporating Islamic ideas in the belief system. Again, they're hijacking, they're infiltrating, and they're making something else theirs. They're trying to hide what they really are. So I just threw it in just to give us a little. Baphomet. Baphomet is a deity allegedly worshipped by the Knights Templar. Subsequently became incorporated into various occult and Western esoteric traditions. The name Baphomet appeared in the trial transcripts for the Inquisition of the Knights Templar. So he's given basically by the tribe of Dan, by the Dans. He's a deity. He represents them. I'm going to show you what he really represents. I've showed you that he represents things in Washington, the statue in Washington holding up the two fingers.
Yeah.
But he also represents all of this. Here's all these different religions. They've put them together, and it represents the Baphomet under sacred geometry.
What a disgusting thing that is.
Isn't it? So here, if we take the word Baphomet and we put it through the @bash encryption, the @bash code, it's a monolithic betic. It's a cipher. It's a substitute cipher. It means you take the language's alphabet and you string it out, and then you just reverse it. It's actually called the @bash. Okay, so if you take Baphomet and put it through the Hebrew language with, the first letter of the alphabet being the last letter, you completely swap the letters. If you put Baphomet through it in Hebrew, the letters that it spells, translated through Greek, is the word Sophia.
Yeah, wisdom.
Sophia means wisdom. Is connected to the different incarnations of sacred female knowledge and to those goddesses listed. Well, we'll go through a list. Sophia is one of the central figures of Gnosticism and Christian philosophy movement, uncertain origins that's most likely or originated in ancient Rome and Persia. Okay, so
I'm
now
glad you threw up those air quotes, dude.
Well, this is the Danites again, twisting. Okay, so now we know the Greeks, they're Danites. Sophia and through Dan is wisdom. All right. And originated these Christian philosophies originated through Rome and Persia, right? Rome was attacked through the Greeks, right? And Persia, like I said, Persian, Phoenician, Palestine, Philistine, the P's are Danites. Okay. I think the P's more would represent the tribe of Ben and Dan's, who they became. So wisdom, what else represents wisdom?
Lilith, the owl.
The owl. So the owl is the Baphomet. They both, if you see an owl, you see a Baphomet. If you see a Baphomet, you see an owl. They represent the same thing.
Remember in the old Clash of the Titans movie?
I do.
With
vaguely.
the little mechanical owl?
Mm.
He used to follow Perseus around. That's what that looked like, yeah.
It does. All right, so here we have an order of the owls. The order of the owls is several different claimed variations in Indiana, but the order of the owls is an American order. There's an American order of the owls. It became a fraternal order of the Orioles in 1910. But the order of the owls originated Scottish. It's where the Scottish Rite. And here we go, an Egyptian owl god.
What's that place in California called?
We'll get there.
Right,
We'll get there. We're getting there.
Right.
We're getting there. Okay. Egyptian owl god. So if you type up owl god, Egyptians called the god Apollo Horus in their own language. So Apollo and Horus are an owl. Horus, whom the Egyptians equated with the Greek Apollo, was in fact Horus the Elder. He was the son of Osiris, which make him the younger. So if you type in Canaanite owl god, you get Moloch.
Yeah.
Moloch is a Canaanite deity associated with biblical sources with the practice of child sacrifice. The name derives from combining the consonants of Hebrew melech, king, and the vowels of bashet, shame. Used in the Old Testament, variant name for the popular god Baal.
Remember that? I don't know what it was, but it was like a sports show where the kid brought that giant bull out. Remember that?
Wow. Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah, that was Moloch. That was a yeah.
So basically, Moloch is Horus. Horus is Apollo.
Yeah, they're all the same, man.
Roman owl god. Minerva. Her symbol is the owl. Roman mythology, Minerva is the goddess of wisdom, and her pet owl is the symbol not only of wisdom, but knowledge, culture, and discernment. Who is Minerva? She is Athena. The Greek mythology, little owl is Athena. Seeing a pattern?
Oh, yeah.
So here's a coin from the 4th century from Tyre, Phoenicia. It's a silver shekel with the owl. And a representation of somebody in a boat going across the ocean. A Danite.
Yeah, I remember that.
We still put owls on money. We're not, so big on and screaming out we're Phoenician Danites, this isn't a shekel, but there's an owl on this dollar bill. This is a skull and bones ring with an owl on it. And the snake eating itself.
Yeah, the Ouroboros, yeah. That looks like a pretty nasty looking ring, man. What an evil thing.
All around. There's not just... So I pointed out many times all the sacred geometry. But I never, I kind of had an idea, but I didn't know completely. And it registered a lot more this time when I found it. But here's the White House.
Yeah.
It's an owl, but it also has its wings opened at the very tip of the pyramid.
Yeah.
And then there's 13 steps before the top of the pyramid that points right to the center of the White House, in the center of the owl. So here we go. Where I just stopped you from a few slides ago. This is the Owl and Spiders Club, 1872. And this is their building. This is the sign that was dedicated in 1933. As this post is about that art, not the club. It's simply, Wikipedia says about the Bohemian Club. The Bohemian Club is a private gentleman's club located in San Francisco, California, founded in 1872 from a regular meeting of journalists, artists, musicians, and soon began accept businessmen and entrepreneurs and permanent members. So it's called Bohemian Grove, is what you were asking a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a secret club under the name of art. We named it in art first, but then we let in businessmen and entrepreneurs and politicians. There's a number of past members in this list, but a modern club are private. Some prominent figures have been given honorary membership, such as Richard Nixon, William Randolph Hearst, You include U.S. presidents, every Republican president since Calvin Coolidge. No exceptions. Every single one of them.
What, dude? No, they're good guys, man.
So that's like they're the Danites in every aspect: art, culture, politics, business, entrepreneurs. Okay, and they had their secret club. And this, I showed you this statue before. It's in New York City, outside of the New York Herald. It's the New York Times. The guy that this monument, he started the New York Times on November 19th.
Oh, the 19th? Huh.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. And what it really, there's owls on it. So I was like, oh yeah, there was owls. I remember this. It was the bell ringers, but it's really Minerva and the bell ringers. The ceremony talks about the ceremony of this ringing the bell and the time, but there's owls on top of this, and it's the goddess.
That's like the Salvation Army, man.
Correct.
They're out there every Christmas ringing them little bells.
100%. And behind it is the actual building of the newspaper, and that's the owl on top of the goddess statue. And if you can see on the building, and the architect directly behind it is also an owl. Coincidences?
Yeah, must be a coincidence.
This is James Gordon Bennett Sr., who founded the New York Herald. And he died at the age of 76 in Manhattan, New York City. He was one of the founders in the Bohemian Club, in that Owls and Spiders. Yeah. But there was a club that he was copying. And this is the club. Schlarafa. I hacked it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad it was you trying to pronounce it, not me, man.
Schlarafaria. All right, it's the grandpa of the Bohemian Grove secret club. It's founded in Prague, Bohemia, in 1859, 13 years before the Bohemian Club. Initially composed of actors, artists, literati, and musicians. Much of like the Bohemian Club, it's all in the name of art. We're just a club of artists and musicians.
Of course.
But they all have an owl totem, an owl representing themselves. And this guy, he started the Schafferari Schlarafari, the worldwide German-speaking society founded in Prague, the Austrian Empire, in 1859, with a pledge of friendship, art, and humor. Kind of sounds like the Masons, brother, love, peace, and bullcrap.
World domination. Yeah.
Like the Danites, we take over, we infiltrate. And I kind of didn't like the guy's name, but I report everything truth. And his name is Franz.
Oh, man.
Yes. Franz. What was crazy is about this, there's three different Franzes. There's like an opera singer from Germany, or he's a German, whatever. There was three different people involved. And then I found this guy, and he's the one that started it. And they would meet every week. And this is the castle that he owned that everybody would meet in.
Dang.
In Prague. You know what castle was modeled after this one?
No.
Does that one look familiar?
Is that Disneyland or something?
100%.
Oh.
Disneyland was modeled after this because why? Because that cartoonist, artist, musician, great old guy, Walt Hitler.
Yeah, Walt the Hitler Disney.
Walt Hitler. Right. So the only difference is he added in the three domes, right? Up here, the three that the guys are walking through, three numbers. It's the Trinity. The three of that they hijacked the Trinity, meaning they stole it, but they have it meaning to themselves. So the Danites are your Freemasons. Danites are your secret societies of elites. Danites are your politicians on both sides, both being Danites. Even though red hates blue and blue will kill red, right? They're all Danites. Their whole mission is to get in there, come in with another army, and we're going to just make it look like we're taking over or we're peace fighters, but we're really fighting our cousin, sacrificing some of them, right? It's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. And Walt Disney, so I discovered that Walt Disney Castle was modeled after the Secret Club Castle. I'm like, of course it was, right? Just the same reaction as Jay just had. But what is Disney really doing? Right? Hijacking, conditioning. Oh, yeah. So as I'm putting it together this weekend, this commercial came on and it caught my attention. And this guy, he's done work with Disney and Hollywood and the magic spell casting of keeping you conditioned and brainwashed. Right? His name's Anthony Anderson. He's an actor living with type 2 diabetes. He's a Novo Nordisk spokesman. And here, he's telling you if you're diabetic, you're 4 times greater risk of stroke, heart attack, cardiovascular death. If you suddenly die, it's because you may have been a diabetic.
Oh, yeah, that's a good narrative for them to take, isn't it?
Huh? Isn't it? And trust me, I'm a good guy. You know me. Here's all my insulin medication from Nervo Disc. I had to look them up. And here...
Oh, my goodness.
Here is their symbol, their sign. This is them.
That's like Moloch sun worship.
Right. Didn't you just point that out? What was it? The Windows 11?
Oh, yeah.
So here you go. We got the cure for your problem. Where did you get the problem from?
From the cure.
We feed it. Right? Exactly.
The cure made me sick, man.
Dude, so I looked up where they're from. Who owns this place? Right? It's the Nervo Disc Foundation. The company's shares are not listed or held by the holdings. It's a Danish public limited liability company.
Danish.
They are from the tribe of Britain.
Yeah.
It's literally that simple.
Yeah, dude, that's sick.
So, how do you think Andy Anderson became a diabetic? It's possible to be born that way. But how do you think diabetic? What causes diabetic? Lots of sugar?
That's what I heard.
70 grams of sugar in your Mountain Dew?
Yeah, right.
Right. There's 12 grams of sugar in something that shouldn't have sugar in it just to make it taste good for you. So you want to eat it. Sugar is poison. And you know how that pretty sugar, the pretty white sugar on your table, do you know how it gets white? From sulfur dioxide.
Yeah, bleach, yeah. Bleach is
It's a dyeing process. Raw sugar cane. The juice is mixed with lime and evaporated. But before the sulfur dioxide is added, milled white sugar cane before evaporated. This is what makes table sugar white. It bleaches it. Sulfur dioxide. Where is sulfur dioxide manufactured? Where do we get it? Because we're going to need a supply of it. It takes a lot. There's a lot of sugar out there. It's manufactured sulfuric acid. They make sulfuric acid. They make paper, and they make all your food preservatives with it. There's workers. There's a list of risks of being exposed to sulfur dioxide, including factory workers in industries where it occurs as byproduct, like copper smelting or power plant.
How funny they put copper smelting. Copper, the blue bloods, the serpent. How interesting they use that as an example.
Okay, so they're producing a lot. But where, how? Where does it come from? Huh? Power plants, oil refineries, motor vehicles, and domestic boilers and fires are all sources of sulfur dioxide. So while you're getting engulfed in this argument of, my electric car is so much better for the earth, your gas car, we should solve this problem. There is no problem. If they want oil refineries and fossil fuels to go away, they need it to make the poison they're feeding you to take the drugs they need. They want you to drive the cars. The more you do that, the more it runs that industry, the more sulfur dioxide they get. Because the only other place to get sulfur dioxide is from active volcanoes, which is one of the highest risks job in the world. Is a worker going into a mine in a volcano and getting sulfuric acid because of the demand on sugar. Makes people think I can make so much money going into an active volcano tunnel and getting sulfur dioxide. It's a colorless gas. It's irritating odors. It's produced by burning fossil fuels and the smelting of mineral ores. They're it's a big circle. Feed you the poison.
That's fire and brimstone. That's what
100.
took out of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's that's a good jump into the next show for next time. Come out, where was their city? Where were they destroyed? The true promised land, right? But that brought me to the end. That's what I had put together, and the whole point, I don't know if I was bounced around too much or too scattered, but the whole point of it is who the Dans were, what their little jealousy problem with the whole, from the beginning with their family thing. They're trying to take over, hijack, make anything theirs, and hate on their stepbrother because they're not their stepbrother. And they still control everything. It's the same people, same way what happened to America, because America was the true old world. They came from there and they made a full, complete circle, taking over everything and making it theirs, and erasing old histories and rewriting them as theirs.
Yeah,
So,
dude. And they're coming back on the scene to finish the job. They're all Luciferians, man.
100%. And the whole time they just kind of changed the name, made it look like it was a completely different city across a little puddle, another city that was completely different people, but it was really them. It's the same. And every infraction along the way of somebody who was immortalized in the history is really a male physical presentation of the personification of a female goddess, because the goddess represents war and destruction, and that was their main purpose. And they may, when you think of the war, destruction of, they just obliterated all the architect in the whole country and everything in it. They mostly just wiped out the controlling power of the people, demolished them, took over what was existing and made it theirs, erased your ancestry, erased your knowledge of your culture, made you believe your culture was something else than what it was, and you came from somewhere else. But anyways.
Well, that's what we're slowly showing people, that history is nothing but a fiction.
It's completely a falsity. It's an artificial reality.
the Matrix.
And that is exactly where it comes from. It's the same thing as with the simulation. But we all see truths in different ways and from different points at different times. So what may be a truth to me in the way Jay and I see it may not be a truth for you in the same sight. You might see it more technological. Doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean we're wrong. We're all trying to awaken and see and help each other see that it's artificial, and you're being dragged to an artificial everything.
Yep, one giant deception, all to lead us away from the Father.
Because of simple jealousy.
Yep. Satan was jealous of us. That's how it all started.
And it comes through in that story too. I mean, looking at the Trapedan in the sense, just like you said, made so many things, more things make sense. And going back over again, there's things that a picture or something, a sentence I said and shows. We're up to what, 15, 16 now. So it's been about a year. I've come further, and I'm like, absolutely. I thought I had some chops in showing some Freemasonry and alchemy and sacred geometry a year ago, but it's God given, and I can sit here and give you testimony of my proofs of it being God given, but it truly is. And sometimes when Jay and I even have silences, we're still speaking to each other and sending messages to each other through each other.
Yeah, God's awesome, man. He's definitely waking us up to the truth, which is awesome.
It is awesome. And God knew me before I knew him, and every day goes by, I'm a stronger believer.
Amen to that.
I don't understand it, but it's beautiful, and I'm willing to grab a hold of it and go with it.
Yes,
so
sir.
All right, so if you're still with us, if you listen to the whole show, I appreciate it. We'll have more to come. God bless all of you. Stay vigilant. Till next time.
All right, buddy. Thanks a lot.
See you later, Jay.
Talk to you later. All right, everybody. That's the show for today. Thank you all for stopping by, and we will see you guys on the next go round. Until then, God bless, and check out my latest video. Take care.